She waited until I was asleep. Not in a deep, snoring kind of sleep, just the kind that comes after taking those prescription pain pills they give you after minor surgery. I remember lying in bed, the hall light casting a thin sliver through the crack in the door, hearing Natalie's footsteps in the kitchen. I remember thinking, she's just grabbing water. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. I didn't know she had already memorized where the real safe was. My name is Harold Dean Watkins. I'm 66 years old, and I live in Akron, Ohio. Widower, father of one, grandfather of two. My wife Elaine passed 8 years ago, and I've lived alone ever since. A quiet man in a quiet brick house on Bunker Hill Avenue. I've got a bad back, a shelf full of used books, and a habit of keeping things, especially things that matter. Elaine's ring was one of those things. It wasn't flashy, not some oversized rock. No, it was a soft blue sapphire set in gold, passed down from her grandmother, who came to America with nothing but 2 trunks and a little boy. That ring had survived wars, ocean crossings, marriages, childbirth, heartbreak. And after Elaine died, I kept it in the one place no one ever looked, behind the furnace panel in the basement. Not in the upstairs safe. That one was for show, for insurance. But Natalie had been watching me closer than I thought. Before I get into it all, I want to say thank you for listening to my story on the Father's Advice channel. And for those of you tuning in, let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It helps more than you know. Now, back to that night. Natalie said she'd stay a few days to help me recover from the procedure. Said she'd bring the kids, maybe cook something warm, clean up a little. I remember smiling at the thought of it. She hadn't stayed over since Elaine's funeral. We used to be so close, her and I. She was my world once. I taught her how to ride a bike, how to check oil, how to spot a liar. I never taught her how to become one. Around 2 a.m. I stirred. The pain meds were wearing off. The house was too quiet. I called her name. No answer. The guest room door was wide open. I called again. Nothing. So I got up, slow, careful. My balance isn't what it used to be. I walked past the kitchen. The back door was ajar. And when I turned toward the basement, that's when my stomach dropped. The furnace room light was still on. I knew. Right then. I didn't want to believe it, but my legs carried me down those steps like they had a mind of their own. And when I reached the panel and saw the little scratch marks on the edge, the ones she must have made trying to pry it open, I felt it. Betrayal. The kind that doesn't scream. It whispers. It settles in your chest like a stone. You raised someone, fed them, held them through fevers and breakups and car accidents, and they rob you like a stranger in the night. The ring was gone. But worse than that, she'd left the fake safe untouched. She wanted me to notice. She wanted me to know she knew. I stood there in my bathrobe, shaking, the concrete floor cold under my bare feet, and I said out loud to no one, "Why, Natalie?" And the truth is, I still don't know. But I was going to find out. What hurt most wasn't the loss. It was the fact that she waited until I couldn't fight back. She waited until I was asleep, and that's when I realized maybe I'd been asleep for longer than I thought. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the recliner with the old quilt Elaine made during chemo, staring at the turned-off TV, the kind of silence that makes the walls feel closer. My phone was beside me on the table, screen lit up every now and then with some ad or weather alert, but nothing from her. No Natalie. No, "Hey Dad, sorry I left, I was tired." Nothing. The house still smelled like her shampoo, the orange blossom kind Elaine used to hate. Around 7 a.m. I went back to the basement. Not for answers. I didn't expect any, just, I don't know, to feel something, maybe to prove to myself I wasn't crazy. The panel was still ajar, the way she left it. Like a ripped bandage half stuck to skin. I sat down on the old tool bench and stared at the spot where the ring had been. And that's when I saw it. A piece of lined paper tucked halfway behind the bottom shelf. Folded once. Looked like a grocery list. My knees crackled when I bent down to get it. At the top it said, milk, Tylenol, eggs, cat food, cash. I almost tossed it, but something made me look closer. Down near the bottom, in a different pen, written sideways in the margin like a nervous afterthought, was this: Martin's Pawn. Ask for Lou, no questions. I didn't know a Lou, and we sure as hell didn't have a cat. I turned the paper over, nothing else, just a faint lipstick smear on the corner. The color Natalie always wore when she had something to hide. Now, I'm not a detective. I'm a 66-year-old man with high blood pressure and a drawer full of arthritis creams, but I've lived long enough to know when someone leaves a trail. And my daughter, my only child, had left a trail. I didn't call her, didn't text. What would I even say? Hey, sweetheart, did you sell your dead mother's ring and leave me the address of the fence by accident? No. I needed to be smarter than that. I made coffee. Strong, black, no sugar. Then I pulled the old yellow pages from the drawer. Yes, I still keep one. And flipped to the pawn shops. And there it was. Martin's Exchange and Loan. East Side, down near the train tracks. I'd driven past it 100 times. Never once thought to go in. Never thought I'd need to. But when your own blood steals from you and disappears like fog, something in you wakes up. Elaine used to say I had a gift for seeing what other people missed. You're quiet, Harold, but your eyes catch everything, she'd tell me after church, noticing who hadn't shown up, who looked thin, who had something they weren't saying. Maybe that's what I'd forgotten. Maybe that's what Natalie thought I lost. I ran my hand along the cold furnace panel, closed it gently, and whispered, "Not yet." Because it wasn't time to confront her. Not yet. First, I had to see if Lou existed. And more than that, I needed to find out how long she'd been planning this. Pawn shops have a smell. It's not something most folks talk about, but it's there. Like rust, old sweat, and desperation that's been vacuum sealed. Martin's Pawn sat squat and mean between a liquor store and a closed-down bakery with "God Bless Our Troops" still painted on the shutters. The windows were thick with bars, and the only light inside came from a buzzing strip overhead. I hadn't been in one of these places since the early '80s, when I sold my old guitar for rent money during the layoffs. I stepped inside and felt eyes on me before I even saw him. "You need something?" came the voice from behind the plexiglass. Lou. Big man. Forearms like tree trunks. The kind of guy who doesn't have to ask twice. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, shaved head, wearing a faded Cleveland Browns hoodie. He didn't look up from his sandwich. "Just looking," I said, casual, trying to sound like a bored old man pawing for coins. "Don't carry anything over $50 on the floor. If you're looking for tools, they're in back." I wandered, looked at a shelf of old watches, a stack of camera lenses, a trumpet missing its mouthpiece. Then, on the back counter near the register, behind the glass, I saw it. A photograph, just a little one, taped to a receipt clipboard, blurry, like it was taken in a rush. But my heart caught the moment I saw the soft oval shape and the blue stone. Sapphire. Oval cut. Set in gold with 2 little leaf etchings on either side. Elaine's ring. I leaned in a little, Not too much. Didn't want to spook him. "Pretty ring," I said, tapping the glass softly. Lou glanced up. "Was. Gone already?" "Maybe," he said, chewing slowly, like each bite gave him time to think. "Why?" "Just reminds me of one my wife used to have. Family piece. Lost it a while back." Lou wiped his mouth with a napkin. His eyes sharpened, just a flicker. "People lose things all the time," he said. "Doesn't mean they want them found." I met his gaze through the plexiglass. Didn't blink. "Yeah. But sometimes the one who loses it isn't the one who gave it away." That landed. For the first time, Lou sat up straight, looked at me a little longer. Not angry, just calculating. "You local?" he asked. "Born and raised." "Then you should know something," he said, setting down his sandwich. "If something was sold here, it came with ID. We don't deal in ghosts." "I'm not looking for ghosts," I said softly. "I'm looking for what's mine." A long pause. Lou's lips pressed into a line. He slid the clipboard under the counter. The photo disappeared. "I think we're done here," he said. I nodded. "Yeah, I think we are." I walked out slower than I came in. The wind hit my face like a slap. Back in the truck, I sat with the engine off, hands shaking a little more than usual, not from age, from knowing. She sold it. She sold her mother's ring, and she brought ID, which meant she knew what it meant, and did it anyway. I stared at the cracked dashboard, the reflection of my old face in the windshield, and I remembered Natalie as a little girl in pigtails, holding her mom's hand, saying, "Can I wear the blue ring when I get married someday?" That was the first time I felt it, the shift. She hadn't just taken something, she traded it. Now I needed to find out what she got in return. I didn't go straight home after the pawn shop. Instead, I drove toward Natalie's neighborhood. Not all the way. Just close enough to see the houses, the tidy sidewalks, the fake stone mailboxes. One of those new developments where every driveway looks the same and every porch has the same plastic wreath. I parked 2 blocks down. Didn't want the kids to see me, didn't want her to think I was snooping, even though I was. Natalie's street was quiet, tucked in the back of a cul-de-sac like some suburban secret, a minivan with a soccer magnet, a garbage bin still out from Tuesday. Nothing unusual. But I noticed something different, a new car in the driveway, not the old Honda she drove last year. This one was shiny, black, a BMW SUV with out-of-state tags. I took a picture from inside my truck, zoomed in. Brand new plates. My stomach knotted. She didn't need that kind of car. Not with 2 kids in public school and a mortgage hanging around her neck like a wet scarf. The ring didn't go for that much, I thought. It couldn't have. So I drove around the block and parked near the park trail where the moms gather in the morning for pickup. Waited by the bench, like I was just resting. An old man with a limp and nothing better to do. That's when I heard them. 2 women. One I recognized. Her name was Marlene. Used to work at the same elementary school where Elaine taught for years. They didn't see me, didn't look twice. She traded up big time. Marlene laughed, sipping her iced coffee. "Did you see that thing? Full leather, GPS, heated everything." "Yeah, I asked her how she managed it," the other one said. "She said something about clearing out old family junk." My mouth went dry. She said her dad kept a lot of useless antiques, that it was time to let go of the past. Can you believe that? They walked past me like I was part of the bench. I just sat there. Frozen. Useless antiques. That's what the ring was to her. Not a memory, not a symbol. just clutter to be traded for leather seats and Bluetooth. The woman who cried at her mother's funeral now sold her wedding ring like it was a scratched-up record. Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table and took the ring's photo from a manila envelope I had printed at the drugstore. I placed it next to a photo of Elaine on our 35th anniversary. She was wearing it in that picture, the same soft blue that matched her dress, the same smile she gave only to me. Natalie used to say she wanted a love like that, a simple, honest kind. Now she wanted German luxury and suburban applause. I ran my hand down my face and whispered into the empty kitchen, "She didn't just sell the ring. She sold what it stood for." And that's when I stopped hoping she'd call. Because that kind of betrayal doesn't come from a mistake. It comes from who someone chooses to become. And now I had to decide who I was going to be. The kind of father who stayed silent, or the kind who fought back. It's funny what people forget. Natalie remembered the furnace panel. She remembered the decoy safe. She remembered my limp and my medication schedule. She even remembered the coffee mug I use when my arthritis flares up. But she forgot the bank box. I hadn't been there in over 6 years. It was one of those things you set up when you're younger, when you think anything could happen. A fire, a flood, a war. Back in '92, Elaine said, "If we're going to keep the ring in the house, let's at least put the paper somewhere safe." And we did. First National Savings on Hillcrest. Branch doesn't even show up on Google Maps anymore. Too old, too local. But when I walked through that frosted glass door with my cane tapping against the tile, the woman behind the counter looked up like I was a ghost. "Mr. Watkins?" I smiled, still breathing. She brought the box out from the vault herself. "Haven't had anyone touch this since 2018. I sat at the little cubicle in the back, closed the curtain, and opened the lid. There it was. A red folder marked Elaine, Personal Items. Inside, a copy of the original appraisal for the sapphire ring. 1952. Done by a jeweler in New Jersey. Estimated then at $1,800. Probably 5 times that now. Underneath it, a small envelope of photographs. Elaine's grandmother on her wedding day, wearing that ring. Elaine as a teenager, beaming with pride at some school dance, her mother letting her wear it just for the night. And then one I forgot even existed. Me and Elaine, sitting on the porch in '78, her head on my shoulder, ring catching the light like it was winking at the camera. But the thing that got me? The letter. Folded, aged, her handwriting like music on the page. "Harold, if you're reading this, it means you're still the careful man I married." She wrote it the year before her diagnosis. "Just in case," she said. The letter wasn't long, but she said this: "Don't let the world decide what our memories are worth. Keep the ring safe or give it to someone who understands love the way we did. Not just blood, but spirit. And if Natalie ever forgets who she is, don't get angry. Just remind her who she was." That's your power, Harold. Not yelling. Remembering. I sat there a long time. Not crying, not mad, just full. Because sometimes when the world steals from you, what you need most isn't revenge. It's memory. And this box? It wasn't just a backup. It was my evidence. She didn't just steal a ring. She erased 3 generations of memory. But I had it all, right here, in my hands. And now I had a decision to make. Would I let Natalie get away with rewriting our history, or would I show her the pages she forgot I kept? The potatoes burned. I'd peeled them slow that morning, the way Elaine used to. Thin strips, long as ribbons. Boiled them with just a touch of garlic and butter. waiting for them to soften like they always did on Sundays. The roast had been in since 8. The house smelled like memory, like peace, like something that should have mattered to Natalie. She said she'd be here by 1. By 2, I'd already set the table. Just 3 places. Me, her, and the ghost between us. Elaine's chair sat at the end, untouched, just the way she left it the last Easter she was alive. A small doily under the water glass. That old seat cushion she'd sewn from leftover dress fabric. I never moved it. Felt wrong to do so. At 2:15 I texted, "Still coming?" Read. No reply. By 3 the potatoes were ruined, the roast was drying out, and my hope, what little was left of it, was turning brittle. I poured myself a glass of tea, sat down, and stared at her plate. I'd even made the rolls she liked. The ones with honey brushed on top. I remembered the way she used to eat them as a child, pulling them apart with both hands, grinning when the steam hit her nose. She didn't call, didn't cancel. She just didn't come. And somehow that hurt more than the ring, because the ring? That was greed. But this was dismissal. Like none of it mattered. Like I didn't matter. Like the house she was raised in, the table where we said grace, the hands that carried her when she had the flu in 3rd grade, all of it was just clutter. Family clutter. By 4:30, I scraped the roast into a Tupperware and threw the potatoes out. I didn't cry. Not even when I wiped the table. But when I folded the napkin she never used, the one I'd placed in her mother's ring napkin holder, that's when I felt it. The shame. Not hers. Mine. For believing, for thinking she might come back, that maybe guilt would show up at the door holding a pie and wearing her mother's smile. I sat there until dark. No TV, no lights, just the tick of the old clock and the sound of the neighbor's dog. She never texted. Not that night, not the next day. And that's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to face. Natalie wasn't hiding from me. She was erasing me. One choice at a time. Starting with the ring, then the dinner. And next, God help me, maybe the whole story. But I have the story. I have the box. And now I have nothing left to lose. The copier jammed 3 times. By the 4th, I was ready to throw the whole thing through the window. But that's when I heard her voice. "Don't force it. That tray's temperamental. Let me." I turned. She had gray in her hair and glasses on a chain. Floral blouse, rolled sleeves, looked like someone who'd been in charge of a lot of card catalogs in her day. "Claire," her name tag said, "volunteer archivist." She walked over, hit 2 buttons, jiggled the tray, and like magic, the copier blinked back to life. "Try again," she smiled. "What are we preserving today?" I hesitated. I hadn't planned to explain, but something about her voice, soft, clipped, not nosy, made me speak. "Family papers. Things my daughter threw away." Claire didn't blink, just nodded once. "Then let's save them." We stood together while the machine slowly spit out copies. The appraisal, the photo of Elaine in that blue dress, the handwritten letter with the ink faded just slightly at the edges. She didn't ask questions. Not until the last page came out. "Would you like me to help you back them up digitally?" she asked gently. "We offer that for seniors. I can even save it onto a flash drive." I nodded. That'd be kind. She led me to a side desk with an old scanner and a slow computer. We sat there side by side, watching the bar crawl across the screen as each page was saved. Halfway through, she said, "It's good you're doing this. A lot of folks wait too long to protect what matters. I stared at the screen. My daughter sold the ring, pawned it, used the money for a car. Claire paused, then placed her hand softly on mine. I'm sorry. I nodded. Her mother wanted it to go to the grandkids. Said it was love passed down, not jewelry. She broke the chain, Claire said. It was a simple phrase, but it cut deep. Yes, I whispered. She broke the chain. By the time we finished, I had 2 folders, one with prints, one with a USB drive Claire labeled neatly, Elaine's Legacy. I tucked them both into my bag and stood up to go. Claire stopped me. Some things you can't fix, she said, but you can keep them from being forgotten. I thanked her. I meant it. Outside, the autumn air had teeth, but I felt warmer than I had in days, because today I didn't just remember Elaine, I preserved her. And somewhere, in some drawer, Natalie might think she erased it all. But now I held the whole truth, and the time was coming, soon, when she'd have to face it. The subject line was simple. You deserve to know. I stared at it for a full minute before typing anything else. Brian wasn't a bad man. He was quiet, passive. The kind of husband who nodded more than he spoke. The kind of man who went to work, came home, and trusted too much. Maybe too much in Natalie. He loved her. That much I knew. And maybe that's why I never blamed him for how she turned out. I used to think, he'll help balance her. But he didn't. He just faded behind her shine. So I wrote the email not to punish, but to wake him up. Brian. I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing not out of anger, but out of clarity. You may not know what Natalie did with her mother's ring. I didn't either, until recently. Attached are 3 documents. A scanned copy of the original appraisal, 1952. A photograph of Elaine wearing the ring on our 35th anniversary. A personal letter. Elaine wrote to me, concerning the future of the ring and its meaning. You'll also find a scanned image of the ring as it appeared at Martin's pawn shop last week, listed under Natalie's name. I'm not asking for anything, not money, not an apology, just truth. Elaine believed in legacy, in memory, in teaching the next generation to honor the past. Selling that ring wasn't just a transaction, it was erasure. Maybe she told you it was just a trinket, that it didn't matter, that I wouldn't notice. But I noticed. And now you know. Do with that what you will. Harold. I sat there with the cursor hovering over send for maybe 20 minutes. Then I clicked. Nothing changed in the room. The light didn't flicker. The chair didn't creak. But something changed in me. It was done. The story had left my hands. No more hiding. No more hoping she'd come around on her own. Now her house held truth, and truth has a way of dragging things into the light, even the things buried deepest. I closed the laptop, stood up slow, and whispered to no one, let's see what burns first, the lie or the silence. The doorbell rang 3 times, not rushed, not frantic, just expectant. I knew it was her before I even looked through the curtain. Natalie stood there with her arms crossed, hoodie sleeves pushed up to her elbows. No purse, no kids, just her. I opened the door and stepped aside. You came, I said. She walked in like she owned the place, like it was still the house she grew up in, before memory had weight. I saw the email, she said, not meeting my eyes. No reply, I said, walking past her toward the kitchen. I didn't know what to say, she murmured. Start with the truth. She leaned against the counter. Dad, it's just a ring. No, it was your mother's ring. She didn't respond, just looked at the floor like it might give her better words. I needed the money, she said finally. For what? The car? I asked. Her mouth tightened. You don't understand. Things are tighter than they look. Brian lost some hours. The van needs work. And so you sold the ring your mother wanted passed to your children, I said, my voice flat. You didn't ask. You didn't call. You waited until I was on pain meds, and you took it. She stood up straight then, like something in her snapped. I thought you wouldn't even notice. You never wore it. You keep everything locked up like a museum. What good is memory if nobody gets to use it? My jaw clenched. Memory isn't for using, it's for honoring. She laughed, bitter and sharp. That's the problem, Dad. You care more about dead people's stuff than living people's needs. I walked to the table, picked up the folder Claire had helped me label. Do you know what this is? She didn't answer. It's every proof of what that ring meant. Your grandmother's wedding photo, your mother's letter, the appraisal, the story behind the story, the legacy you tried to bury under a car note. She looked at the folder like it was radioactive. I just needed help, she whispered. Then you should have asked. We stood there in silence, a father and daughter, a generation apart staring at a wound with no stitches. I was going to tell you, she muttered. No, I said. You were going to hope I never noticed. She swallowed, blinked hard, still no tears. I'll pay you back, she said. I'll find a way. I shook my head. You don't owe me money, Natalie. You owe your children a story worth inheriting. She finally looked at me then, eyes red, mouth trembling. And for a second, just a second, I saw the little girl who used to braid Elaine's hair, but then she looked away again. I have to go, she said. I didn't stop her. She walked to the door, hand on the knob, paused. Then, quietly, I didn't think it mattered to you anymore. I said nothing, because if she still believed that, then the problem wasn't the ring, it was the story she'd rewritten in her own mind, and some stories don't need to be corrected. They just need to be outlived. She knocked, not rang. 3 gentle taps on the door, like someone asking for permission. I opened it, and there she was, Lily, 10 years old, backpack too big for her frame, braids uneven, holding a notebook like it was the Ark of the Covenant. Grandpa? I blinked. Hey there, Bug. She smiled. Mom said I could come by after school. We're doing a project about family history. And I thought, maybe you could help. For a moment I didn't move, just stared at her. She had Elaine's eyes, the same gray-green that turned blue in certain light, the same way of blinking twice when she was nervous. I stepped aside. Of course, I said. Come on in. She sat at the kitchen table, pulled out markers, a worksheet, and a photo of our old house. Teacher said to ask about our ancestors, like where we came from, traditions, stuff like that. I sat across from her, heart clenching. I wanted to ask, did Natalie put her up to this? Was this some half-hearted apology through a child's hands? But then Lily said, I told my teacher my family's kind of boring, but I remembered you used to tell stories about a boat and a grandmother who made soup from dandelions. I smiled. She wasn't boring. and neither are you. For the next hour, I told Lily about Elaine's grandmother crossing the Atlantic with a canvas bag of sewing needles, about the farm in Pennsylvania, about how Elaine used to press flowers in books and give them to me with notes that smelled like lavender. Lily wrote it all down, her handwriting crooked and eager. At one point she asked, "Did Grandma have anything from back then? Like something special?" I hesitated. "Yes," I said softly. "She did." She tilted her head. "Can I see it?" I stood, walked to the bookshelf, and pulled out one of the scanned photos Claire helped me print, the one of Elaine on our anniversary wearing the sapphire ring. I handed it to her. Lily stared. "Whoa," she whispered. "That's so pretty." "She wore it every Sunday," I said. Said it reminded her of where she came from, and what love looked like. Lily was quiet for a while. Then she said, "I wish I could wear it someday." I looked at her, and something inside me shifted, because Natalie had sold the ring. But this girl, this breath of future with braids and big questions, she was the reason it ever mattered at all. Maybe I couldn't undo what was lost, but I could plant something new. "Lily," I said gently, "how would you like to learn how to press flowers like your grandma used to?" She lit up, and just like that, the chain wasn't broken. It was just being rebuilt, one story at a time. I hadn't opened the jewelry box in 8 years. It sat untouched on the top shelf of the bedroom closet, hidden behind old sweaters and a shoebox full of church programs. The wood still smelled like cedar and lavender oil. Elaine's scent. Faint now, but still there. Inside were hairpins, faded corsages, a rosary she never finished, and a charm bracelet with only 2 charms left, a locket and a tiny shoe. But there was one more thing I'd forgotten. Tucked in the velvet lining under the tray, a loose stone, a small sapphire, deep blue, no setting, just waiting. I drove back to Claire's library on a Tuesday morning and asked her if she knew a jeweler who understood meaning. She did. A woman named Delia who used to restore antiques for the local museum. Quiet, careful, the kind of hands that knew grief and grace at the same time. We met in her little shop near the train tracks. She didn't ask questions, just held the stone up to the light, nodded and said, "Let's make it sing." 3 weeks later she called. "It's ready?" What she handed me wasn't flashy, wasn't large, wasn't loud. It was honest. A modest gold band, the same leaf etchings from Elaine's original. And in the center, the sapphire, not the one that was sold, but one that carried its memory without pretending to be it. "I didn't try to copy it," Delia said. "I made it for her." I paid in cash, slipped the ring into a small velvet pouch, and then I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened the old jewelry box, moved the corsages, and placed the pouch inside. Next to it, I laid a letter. It read, "Lily. By the time you read this, you'll be old enough to understand what legacy means. This ring isn't worth much money, but it's worth every story your grandmother lived. It's not the original. That one was lost, but this one was made from what was left, with hands that cared and a stone that still shines. May it remind you of love that doesn't quit, of women who crossed oceans, and of a grandfather who believed that memory matters. Pass it on when you're ready. Grandpa Harold." I closed the box, placed it back in the closet, and sat on the edge of the bed for a long while. I didn't feel victory. I felt peace. Because sometimes what's stolen doesn't have to stay stolen. Sometimes you reclaim the story, not by punishing the thief, but by giving the next reader a better page. He didn't knock at first, just stood there on the porch, hands in his jacket pockets, staring down at the cracks in my concrete. I opened the door anyway. "Brian," I said. He looked up. "Harold." For a moment we just stood there, two men who knew the same woman, Elaine, in two different ways. One as wife, one as mother-in-law. "I won't stay long," he said. I stepped back. "You came all this way." He walked in slow. Not like Natalie. No bravado, no perfume cloud, just a man carrying something heavy and not sure where to set it down. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer coffee. He didn't ask. "I saw everything," he said after a moment. "The documents, the letter, the appraisal." I nodded. "I figured." "She didn't tell me," he added. "Not until after your email. And even then she minimized it. Said it was just a family ring. Said you were overreacting." I waited. He looked up. But I remembered the day she wore it to our wedding. I remember her saying, "This is my mom's favorite thing in the world. I get to wear it today." His voice cracked a little. Just enough. "That wasn't a trinket," he said. "That was Elaine." He took a breath, then reached into his coat. "I brought this back," he said, handing me a small envelope. Inside was a check. I shook my head. "That's not what this is about." "I know," he said. "But it's what I can do." We sat in silence for a while. Then he added, "I think she's ashamed. But she's also proud, like admitting it would unravel everything she's built." I stared at the bookshelf. "That's the problem. She thinks love is something you build, but it's something you inherit. You care for it. You don't flip it for leather seats." Brian chuckled softly, but not from humor. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I should have noticed, should have said something." "You did now," I replied. "That counts?" He stood to leave. At the door he paused. "She might not say it," he said, "but she knows she was wrong." I met his eyes. "Knowing isn't enough," I said. "The kids need to learn what right looks like." Brian nodded. "Lily's asking more questions lately." "Good," I said. "Let her." He opened the door, stopped. Then, softer than before, "She still wears your old flannel when she's sick. Natalie. She keeps it in her closet, from that camping trip you took when she was 8. I didn't know that, and for the first time in weeks my eyes stung. "Tell her I said thank you," I whispered. He nodded, walked to the car, didn't look back. And for a long time I just stood in the doorway, holding a check I'd never cash, and wondering if broken chains could still carry weight. She would have been 70 today. Elaine. I said her name out loud in the kitchen that morning, just to feel how it landed. The house was still. The morning light spilled through the blinds like warm honey. I made coffee in the old percolator, the one she loved because it made noise and smelled like camping. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I baked her cobbler. Peach. Fresh, from scratch. No shortcuts. The kind of thing she'd make every August with fruit from the roadside stand outside Green. I could almost hear her singing that Patsy Cline song as she stirred the cinnamon in. I laid out the recipe card she wrote in 1983, stained, creased, still folded into thirds. And I followed every step like it was prayer. When it was done, I sat at the table and ate a spoonful. Hot, too hot, just like always, burned my mouth and smiled anyway. Then I gathered what I needed: the photograph of Lily, the printed picture of the new ring, and a flower, a pressed daisy she left in my Bible last week. I drove to the cemetery just after noon. Her headstone hadn't changed. Still gray, still simple, still ours. Elaine Ruth Watkins, 1955 to 2017. Loved and still loving. I knelt, knees stiff, heart full. "Hey there, Bluebird," I said softly. It was what I used to call her when we were young, back when her hair blew wild and she'd run through sprinkler mist, laughing like a child. I set the photo of Lily down first, the one of her at the kitchen table, writing in that crooked hand, then the ring picture. "She's got your eyes," I said, "and your stubborn streak, and maybe, just maybe, your sense of justice." I placed the daisy last, let the wind take it if it wanted to. I couldn't keep the original, I admitted, but I made something new. I think you'd approve. I closed my eyes. No voice came, no sign, no bird on the branch, just wind and silence and the soft ache of something almost whole. "I miss you," I said, "every version of you, the young you, the sick you, the firecracker and the soft shoulder and the woman who knew what mattered." I stood slow. The world felt heavier without her, but steadier too, because I was carrying her forward now, not just in memory, but in legacy. And that was a birthday gift worth giving, even if she wasn't here to open it. I was looking for a screwdriver, not answers, just the flathead, the one with the red handle, to tighten the loose bracket on the porch step before the weather turned. That's when I saw it. A small blue lockbox wedged between two crates of old Christmas lights and a broken humidifier. Dented, rusted at the hinges, a property of Natalie sticker peeling off the front in faded bubble letters. I almost left it. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe something crueler, made me bring it inside. It wasn't locked, just latched. Inside, childhood. A stack of folded notes passed in class. A friendship bracelet. A drawing of a unicorn labeled "Me When I'm Grown Up." But deeper down, under a pile of stickers and ticket stubs, was an envelope, cream-colored, sealed, Elaine's handwriting. To Natalie. For when you feel far away. I sat down at the kitchen table, stared at it. I'd never seen this before, never heard Elaine mention it. But I knew the handwriting like I knew my own breath. And the seal? Unbroken. I didn't open it. It wasn't mine to open. But I held it in my hands for a long time. Because Natalie had been far away for a long time, even when she was in the same room, especially after Elaine passed. And maybe what she did to the ring, to the memory, to me, wasn't just selfishness. Maybe it was grief, misshapen, misguided, but real. I placed the envelope back in the box, carefully. Then I added something of my own, a photo of the new ring, a copy of Elaine's letter to me, and a note in my own handwriting. "If you ever want to come home, start here." I closed the box, didn't relatch it, just set it gently in the hallway closet, where it could be found. When she was ready. Because sometimes we bury what we're not strong enough to read. And sometimes we leave maps behind, even in the dark. The house was starting to sag, just a little. The front porch leaned more than it used to. The kitchen faucet dripped in a rhythm too steady to ignore. Even the floorboards in the hallway had a new complaint when I walked. It wasn't falling apart. It was just waiting. So I started fixing things. Not like I used to, back when I had the stamina to crawl under sinks and balance on ladders without wincing. No, slower now, gentle, like tending to an old friend. Elaine always said the house had good bones. She picked it, not for its size, but for its soul. "This place holds our story," she'd whispered the first night we slept here. So I scrubbed the grout in the bathroom, oiled the squeaky hinges, tightened the loose knobs on the dresser she refinished in 1982. I wasn't preserving it for show. I was preserving it for truth. By the time I reached the attic, the air had that dry paper smell. Dusty sunbeams cut through the slats, and I had to duck low to get near the back wall. That's when I saw it. A cardboard box, labeled in Elaine's handwriting. For later. For them. I carried it downstairs like it was glass. Inside, cassette tapes. 20 or 30, maybe more, each labeled with a date and a title. Lily's Laugh, August 2015. Natalie's first solo. Don't forget this. How to make peach cobbler. The day I knew Harold loved me. If I don't get to meet my grandkids, here's what I want them to know. My hands shook as I picked one up. Elaine hadn't just left behind recipes and letters. She'd left her voice. I found the old player in the hall closet, batteries still in it from some forgotten Christmas toy. I pressed play, the tape clicked, and then her. "Hi, sweetheart. If you're hearing this, it means I didn't get to tell you this in person. But that's okay. Some love waits patiently." I froze. Tears welled, not from sadness, but from presence. She was here, in the room, in the plastic and hiss and warmth of her vowels. She had planned for this, planned for them, because legacy wasn't just rings or recipes. It was voice, memory with heartbeat. I rewound the tape, played it again and again, until the house felt a little stronger, and I remembered why I'd stayed. Because Elaine hadn't left. Not really. She was in the walls, the floors, the tapes, and now, in the next chapter, waiting to be passed on, one story at a time. I parked across the street. Didn't get out right away. Just sat there, engine ticking, watching the fluorescent buzz of Martin's Pawn ripple through the dirty front window. The same red sign, the same bars on the door, the same neon promise. Cash today. It's where it happened. Where the ring changed hands, not just from Natalie to a register, but from memory to merchandise. I crossed the street slow. Inside, the bell above the door rang. He was behind the counter again. The same guy, late 30s maybe, long beard, tattoo on his neck. Looked up like I was just another lost tool set or broken watch. "Can I help you?" I stepped up, pulled out the manila folder. "No trade today," I said. "Just a lesson." He looked confused. "I'm sorry?" I opened the folder and laid out the appraisal. Then the photo of Elaine in her blue dress. Then the letter. The one she wrote me about the ring. And finally, a picture of Lily. He glanced at them. Eyes moved, but no recognition. "This," I said, tapping the photo, "wasn't a sapphire ring. It was 3 generations of women. 1 grandmother, 1 mother, 1 granddaughter who never got the chance." He shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't know." "No," I said. "You didn't. You don't have to." "That's the point." He leaned in. studied the photo longer now. "I sold it," he muttered. "Didn't sit long. Lady came in with cash." "I'm not here to buy it back," I said. "I'm here because you need to understand what you sold." He blinked. "You sold a promise, a future heirloom, a piece of a woman who survived cancer, raised a daughter, buried her parents, and still baked cobbler on birthdays." He didn't speak. I packed the items back in the folder, but left one thing behind. The letter. A copy, not the original. "If someone ever comes in with a ring like that again," I said, "read this first." He nodded. Didn't meet my eyes. Just took the paper like it might bite. I turned to leave, but paused at the door. "You're not the villain," I said, "but you are the middleman. Which means you decide what kind of bridge you are between what people throw away and what still matters." Then I walked out, into the afternoon light, and for the first time since the ring was taken, I didn't feel like something was missing. Because it wasn't about getting it back, it was about bearing witness. And now, someone else knew that it had never been just a ring. It had been a life. It was just a school hallway, but it felt like a cathedral. Kids' artwork lined the walls, construction paper leaves, glitter letters, handprint turkeys even though it was October. I was early, so I sat on one of those two small benches outside Lily's classroom. My knees ached. My heart thudded louder than it should have. Then the door opened. "Grandpa!" Lily ran up, took my hand, and tugged me inside like I was the guest of honor. The room smelled like crayons and Elmer's glue. Each desk had a poster presentation, colorful titles, stick figures. One had a popsicle stick model of a barn. But Lily's? Titled in bold purple marker, "My Family's Hidden History." And there it was. Photos she'd copied from my collection. A picture of Elaine as a girl, a drawing of the ring, the new ring on a hand labeled, "Someday Me." A quote. "Legacy is love, passed through memory." My knees almost gave out. Then she did it. She stood in front of her class and said, "This is my grandpa. He's our family's historian. He remembers things so we don't lose them." She looked at me, beamed. "And he made me a ring, just like my grandma's, because stories don't get old. They get passed down." The teacher smiled. The kids clapped. I didn't know what to say, but I knew what I felt. Not old, not bitter, not broken. Vital. I stayed afterward, helped her pack up her poster. As we walked to the car, I asked, "Who took that picture of you wearing the ring?" She smiled. "Mom did." I paused. "Did she say anything?" Lily nodded. "She said it's yours now. She said she wasn't ready to wear it anyway." I swallowed, hard. The sky above was soft blue, the kind Elaine always called story weather. I opened the passenger door for Lily, buckled her in, and as I drove, her project in the back seat and her future in the front, I whispered a prayer, not of thanks, but of readiness. Because what was lost couldn't be undone, but what was left could still be told. The porch light was still on. I'd left it that way for years. Every night since Elaine passed, I kept it burning, a small beacon, habit more than hope. But tonight, I stood at the threshold, hand on the switch, and paused. Not because I was sad, but because I wasn't. That morning, I dusted the bookshelf, pulled down the old photo albums, moved a few things around in the hallway, not to preserve them, but to live with them. Elaine's scarf now hung on the hook where I kept my cap. Her recipe card sat on the kitchen counter, not locked in a drawer. Even her voice, those tapes, had found a place in the living room beside the old stereo. I played one every Sunday. And Lily? She called last night, just to say hi. Said she found a new story to add to her binder. One about how Elaine saved a lost puppy in the snow when she was 10. I'm writing it in ink, she said. Because that means it matters. I'd smiled so hard it hurt. But Natalie? She hadn't called since the school project. She hadn't said sorry, and that was okay, because I'd stopped waiting for her to change, for her to return the irreplaceable, for her to become the daughter I used to imagine. People are who they are, and legacies aren't built from apologies. They're built from actions. So I made a new Sunday routine: cobbler in the oven, tape in the player, Lily's photo on the table beside Elaine's, and peace in my chest where anger used to be. Tonight, I stood on the porch and looked out at the quiet street. The leaves were turning. The air smelled like wood smoke and promise. I reached up, clicked the porch light off, and whispered, "That chapter's done. Not bitter, not broken, just ready to write the next one."